The 50 impossible artifacts they erased from history. The stone was older than our dates allowed. When the winter sun shot down a narrow passage and lit a hidden chamber, the timeline moved by 3,000 years. That wasn't an anomaly, it was a pattern. 50 artifacts, from gears drowned at sea to sky maps hammered in bronze, refuse the story we teach. One thread ties machines, maps, and bloodlines together, and it is Atlantis. If what you're about to see holds, your kids' textbooks change. Resets, knowledge bottlenecks, cycles of forgetting. To see the pattern, we start where time shouldn't exist, then rewind through bones, cities, and buried blueprints. Here's the promise. We'll follow 3 pillars the evidence actually supports. First, artifacts that shouldn't exist where they do, precision where models say there should be none. Second, DNA that won't go away, ghost lineages and living descendants threading through collapses we call endings. Third, climates that forced amnesia, droughts, floods, and shocks that turned mastery into memory and then into myth. Roadmap, 50 pieces across 5 arcs. We begin before pyramids, where stone keeps calendars with millimeter discipline, and caves carry minds older and sharper than our timelines allow. We move to machines, maps, and methods hiding in plain sight. Muon scans peering into Giza, canal logic beneath rainforest canopies, tolerances at high altitude that behave like a manual. Then bones and blood, admixture, high-altitude adaptations with Denisovan fingerprints, and environmental DNA mapping presence without ruins. After that, Vanish strategies, how some civilizations survived by becoming less visible, not gone. Sea roads and war roads close the loop, because networks are the real organs of civilization. Finally, we'll name the 50 impossible artifacts, show how we vetted them, and tell you what new tools will break this open in 2025-2026. Why now muons are mapping voids. LIDAR is outlining entire cities under jungle. Sediment DNA is writing timelines where no pottery survives. The guesswork is shrinking. So who kept the plans alive, and who buried them? If one workshop carved gears that forecast eclipses and festivals that knowledge traveled in people. Bloodlines carried blueprints, but we'll need to start earlier where stone learned to track the sky. Before the pyramids, deep time that breaks timelines. To understand the betrayal, first see the friendship, people and light locked together in stone. Newgrange, Ireland, built around 320 BCE, centuries before Stonehenge and Egypt's Old Kingdom. Winter solstice dawn. A thin beam threads a roof box and walks the passage until it rests on a chamber's heart for a few minutes, then dies for a year. That's not luck. It's deliberate alignment, a clock made of rock. Spirals and chevrons carved into curbstones whisper a symbolic language we still can't read. Stakes. You're seeing precision and planning, not a fluke of piled earth. Action, communities mobilize quarrying, transport, and orientation to the sun's one-day performance. Impact, timekeeping lives in architecture, ritual demands schedule, memory is literally a building. Meanwhile, under French limestone, Chauvet's walls hold lions, rhinos, and herds in motion from over 30,000 years ago. Shading, contour, and overlap create depth arcing past what anyone expected for the Upper Paleolithic. They didn't know they were primitive. They just drew what they knew. Stakes. We meet a mind that can observe, abstract, and stage narratives across generations. Action, a collapsed entrance sealed pigments and perspectives for tens of millennia until a modern light arrived. Impact, symbolic thought is older and more practiced than our models liked. Cognitive timelines move. Across the Bay of Biscay, Altamira's bison still carry breath under a lamp's flicker, and with them the scandal of disbelief. Accusations of forgery turned into confession letters from academia when more caves surfaced. Stakes. Institutions can be wrong longer than evidence is loud. Action, pigment layered with intention, rock bulges become animal musculature, generations revisit panels. Impact. Art isn't decoration, it's continuity, teaching, ritual, identity, surviving when goods rot. Shift east to southeastern Turkey. Göbekli Tepe rises as enclosures of T-shaped pillars, some several tons, carved with foxes, snakes, boar, vultures. Radiocarbon pushes this to around 11,500 years ago, when our stories say only hunter-gatherers roamed. No wheels, no pottery, but monumental ritual architecture. Stakes. If ritual building precedes settled farming here, then social complexity doesn't wait for granaries. Action teams quarry and raise pillars, carve reliefs, and then, most confounding, bury their own work. Impact. The sequence flips. Communal projects can spark sedentism. Belief can summon agriculture rather than follow it. Saddle Huruk, central Turkey, around 710 BCE. A rooftop city without streets. People move across interconnected houses, drop into rooms from above, cook beside wall paintings of hunts and geometric forms, then bury ancestors beneath floors. Stakes. You live in a place where memory and domestic life interlock, your grandmother literally under your feet. Action. A dense plan manages safety and privacy. Murals and reliefs carry shared narratives. Bones remain at home. Impact, planning, ritual, and daily labor are one continuous fabric. The city is archive and organism. North to Orkney. Skara Brae is small, older than many pyramids, and intimate. Stone beds, central hearths, built-in shelves. Passageways are roofed for wind, walls are earth-thick for warmth. Stakes. Adaptation isn't crude, it's sophisticated design against Atlantic weather. Action. Shared corridors connect domestic pods, craft and ornament accompany tools. Abandonment remains a question. Impact. Endurance isn't about size, it's about fit, design tuned to place. Now a disc of hammered bronze from Germany, around 160 BCE, the Nebra sky disc. Gold inlays form a sun, a crescent moon, and a cluster identified as the Pleiades. Later arc additions likely mark solstitial angles. A gold strip at the base may be a horizon or solar boat motif. Stakes. Astronomical knowledge encoded in portable metal. Action. A ritual or calendrical tool evolves through modification across generations. Impact. The sky becomes transferable technology. The night can be taught. Pause on a human face. The Alps, a melting patch of ice, 1991. Ötzi surfaces from 5,300 years ago carrying a copper-bladed axe, a quiver, a toolkit of flint, birch bark containers, and clothing engineered for cold. Tattoos align with joints, hinting at pain treatment. His last meal still sits in his stomach. Stakes. Metallurgy, medicine-adjacent practice, and logistics existed where we assumed simpler kits. Action. Forensic work reconstructs a murder, an arrow, head trauma, turning a glacier into a crime scene. Impact. Technology spreads earlier and wider than neat maps. Craft packages knowledge into everyday survival. Now the beat that changes this series' heart. Timekeeping in stone is one thing, but stone didn't only keep time. Some people kept gears. Buried in a shipwreck off Antikythera, we'll meet an ancient device that predicts eclipses and schedules festivals with interlocking bronze teeth, proof that plans can live in metal and travel by sea. Before we sail there, understand why it matters. Newgrange's beam, Chauvet's shading, Göbekli Tepe's pillars, Saddle-Höyük's rooftops, Skara Brae's passages, Ötzi's copper, and Nebra's sky are not isolated fireworks. They're a chain. Minds calibrate to cycles. Communities embed knowledge in materials. And then climates, politics, and choices bury or scatter it. Stone kept time. Some used gears. Everything you think is linear becomes cyclical when the light returns to a chamber, and the beam still knows where to go. 10 early impossible instruments. First, the drowned workshop. The Antikythera Mechanism, lifted in fragments from a Roman-era wreck, carries more than corrosion. X-ray CT exposed gear trains, and in 2024-2025, high-resolution imaging clarified backplate inscriptions, tiny letters mapping eclipse cycles and explicitly linking dials to festival calendars and civic scheduling. Stakes. A portable sky computer resets what ancient means. Action. Bronze teeth encode Babylonian Saros cycles. A lunar phase sphere tracks anomaly. New readings show eclipse prediction paired with timetables for Panhellenic gatherings. Astronomy fused to public life. Impact. Precision machining and algorithmic thinking lived in metal long before clock towers, then vanished with a ship. The why now hook lands because 2024-2025 reads turned rumor into operating manual. Now the map that shouldn't have memory. Early modern charts like the Piri Rise compilation are often drafted into fringe claims. Here's the sober point. Some coastlines on composite portolan maps show long knowledge pipelines, sailors stitching inherited observations into living documents. Stakes. Navigation preserves geometry without textbooks. Action. Pilots exchange bearings, winds, and currents. Scribes reconcile dead reckoning with sky fixes. Impact. Cartographic memory can outlast states, while conjecture without provenance belongs in the discard pile. Stone circles that move the calendar backward. Redating in Britain and Brittany keeps nudging megalithic timelines earlier. Stakes. The engineering conversation starts sooner. Action. Quarries, sea transport, and horizon alignment suggest watching solstices and lunar standstills. Impact. Once monuments become instruments, you're looking at communities modeling cycles across generations. A quiet corrective about out-of-place claims. The signal matters, not the spectacle. Stakes. Credibility keeps the pattern intact. Action, we reject spark plug fossils and iron nails in geodes, no context, no stratigraphy, no case. Impact, with noise filtered, the verified pieces get louder. A lens in the rough. From Nimrud to the Mediterranean, optical quality glass and carved rock crystal hint at simple magnification. Stakes, seeing closer changes craft and medicine. Action, artisans grind and polish for beads and inlays. Some pieces reach focal properties that assist engraving or inspection. Impact, early optics don't equal telescopes, but they do show hands chasing clarity. Early metallurgy outside the expected corridors. Copper axes like Ertzes, Balkan copper cultures, and Anatolian workshops complicate the linear march. Stakes, smelting isn't a single invention, it's a network. Action, ore selection, furnace control, and alloy tinkering spread by marriage, trade, and apprenticeship. Impact, metallurgy blooms as mosaics, not a pipeline. The Nebra disc again, but as instrument. Stakes, portable instruction for agricultural timing. Action, gold arcs likely bracket solstitial sunrise and sunset. Repunched holes suggest recalibration. Impact, a community carried a sky in its hands and adjusted it when the heavens and habit disagreed. Tuning the world with rocks. Lithophones from Vietnam's Dadak to West Africa and Europe turn stones into scales. Stakes, music measures material. Action, artisans select slabs for resonance, then tune by thinning. Impact, acoustics is experiment in the open. Rhythm and pitch become shared knowledge, not mystery. Desert observatories carved in void. Nabta Playa's circle and sightlines on the Saharan fringe echo a pastoral astronomy that predates dynastic Egypt. Stakes, calendars for herders, not kings. Action, megaliths note sunrises, cattle cult deposits accumulate around season markers. Impact, climate and sky link survival to ceremony. Seed myths that feel like instructions. Flood stories, storehouse gods, and teachings from before aren't evidence of lost continents, they're memory scaffolds. Stakes, after shocks, a culture compresses know-how into parable. Action, taboo lists, seasonal rites, and founding tales encode when to plant, how to irrigate, where not to build. Impact, narrative as instrument, portable, resilient, retrievable. Here's the throughline. These 10 aren't miracles, they're manuals. A geared calendar rides a hull, a bronze disc teaches night, stones sing in tune, circles cut the year, humble lenses sharpen hands. Across them all, workshop discipline, long baselines of observation, and communities that turn sky into schedule. The catch is transmission. When guilds break, when corridors choke, when elders vanish, instruments become relics. Which brings us to methods hiding in plain sight. The big machines we still argue about, the maps laid in water and stone. If stone kept time and sailors kept routes, engineers kept blueprints, in walls, canals, and heat. Machines, maps, methods, lost engineering in plain sight. While stone kept time on hillsides, something else was happening inside walls we thought we understood. The Great Pyramid, scanned again in 2024-2025, gave up a narrow north-face corridor, tucked behind its chevrons and reinforced a much larger big void above the Grand Gallery. Not treasure rooms, spaces with function. Engineers argue, construction cavities to reduce load or elements in a deliberate internal architecture. Either way, the takeaway is uncomfortable. This monument is more intricate than our diagrams. Stakes. If solid mass is a layered machine of stone and air, then intent and method hide inside geometry, not only on its skin. Action, muon imaging and non-destructive testing. Scan pyramids, outlined the corridor. Endoscopes peered into the chevrons. Thermal, ultrasound, and radar cross-checks tightened the models. Parallel work flagged additional air-filled anomalies at Menkora for future muon confirmation. Impact. Complexity re-enters the story. The line between symbolic and structural blurs, and the why now is simple. 2024-2025 instruments removed guesswork. While that argument hums in Giza, high on a Peruvian ridge the Inca solved a different problem. Machu Picchu sits between cloud and sun, a royal estate with terraces that lock slopes, channels that sip rain, and fountains that tear pressure into calm. The site breathes. Stakes. Survival at altitude needs hydrology you don't see in postcards. Action, intake canals intercept mountain springs. Sediment traps settle grit. Carved spillways bleed flood surges down safe paths. Terraces buffer heat and water, creating microclimates. Impact. This is climate control without switches, stone and gradient doing what valves and filters do now. Across Lake Titicaca's basin, Tiwanaku raises a separate headache, tolerances. Sandstone and andesite blocks meet with seams so tight blades hesitate. Cutouts repeat dimensions like templates migrated from a shop floor. Transport remains a puzzle, reed boats, ramps, rollers, but the intimate part is joinery. Stakes. Precision doesn't require steel, it requires standards. Action. Modular blocks with keyed recesses distribute load. Right angles replicate across modules, surfaces read like rubbed gauges. Impact. Apprenticeship, not miracle, measurement traveling in hands, not books. Meanwhile, in humid lowlands, LIDAR peeled back leaves and found urban water logic. Maya canal systems, once dismissed as moats or ditches, resolve into networks, reservoirs, causeways, spillways tuned to seasonal extremes. At Angkor's scale, water became policy. At Maya scales, it was algorithm. Stakes. Automation before engines. Action. Embankments manage head, culverts equalize, sluices meter flow through neighborhoods. Agriculture sinks to predictable pulses, not constant attention. Impact. Cities survive by hydrating, flushing, and unflooding themselves on schedule. Omens. Far from jungles warmed cities with air. The hypocaust didn't just heat baths, it encoded urban thermal design. Raised floors on pilly wall flues, draft control, fuel staging, heat moved as planned. Stakes. Climate control is an ancient urban service. Action. Furnaces push hot air under floors, smoke climbs behind plaster, vents draw along corridors by pressure differences, maintenance crews sweep soot to keep flows efficient. Impact. HVAC is a lineage, space shaped for physics. Psychological trigger. Once you see the flues, you can't unsee them. Modern buildings still breathe on ancient rhythms. Pause and widen the frame. What connects a pyramid void, mountain channels, Andean tolerances, jungle canals, and Roman flues? Methods carried in guilds and site offices, not abstract theory. The evidence lives in repeated solutions, standardized modules, staged maintenance, overflow paths, access corridors. Even when the texts are silent, the walls are chatty. Now the stakes rise. Continuity. Architects in the Nile knew to lighten dead load with internal spaces. Inca engineers used stepped cascades to dissipate energy. Maya managers partitioned landscapes into hydrological cells. Roman planners calibrated draft to occupancy. None of that requires secret civilizations. It demands teams who measure, iterate, and teach. What nobody knew at the time. We'd read their plans with new tools. Muon radiography turns bedrock into faint photographic paper. LIDAR outlines ghost streets. Ground-penetrating radar maps buried channels. Thermal cameras reveal flue lines behind stucco. The story accelerates because method becomes visible. And when methods repeat across continents, we look for convergent needs rather than conspiracies. But there was one problem that haunts every system: transmission. When the guild breaks, by famine, war, migration, the equations go quiet. Machu Picchu kept flowing because caretakers maintained traps and intakes. Abandon the crew and stone will still draw water, but silt will win. Hypocausts work until soot and drafts don't. Pyramids remain precise forever, but the knowledge of why voids sit where they sit can disappear into ritual. So ask the uncomfortable question: if the plans didn't live in blueprints, where did they live? In people, apprenticeships, lineages, itinerant crews, bloodlines as blueprint. When Maya cities decentralized, canal expertise diffused along kin and clan. When Roman towns shrank, bathkeepers' tricks scattered with them. When Andean states fell, stonemasons took standards into villages and churches. You won't always find the schematics. You'll find their echoes in the next thing built. Here's where everything was about to change. The machines we just walked through are the stable ones: water, heat, load. But the same continuity hides in urban layers: cisterns under Istanbul, basilicas under London, planned grids beneath Mexico City. Maps of modern service tunnels trace older veins. If you stand in a subway and feel a draft, you're inside an inheritance. Blueprints didn't live in stone alone. They lived in hands that crossed generations. And some hands learned a harder lesson: how to hide in plain sight when survival demanded silence. 10 urban systems we missed. While hands carried blueprints, cities carried redundancies. Systems stacked so deep that modern streets rest on ancient answers. 10 quick cases, each a door into a larger machine. Angkor first. LIDAR pulled the jungle veil and revealed a hydraulic megacity. Barrays the size of lakes, graded canals, spillways, and check dams pulsing water through neighborhoods. Stakes. You're looking at climate insurance, not ornament. Action. Monsoon surges get parked in reservoirs, bled into rice fields, and recirculated by gentle slopes. Sediment traps are placed where turbulence drops. Impact. When the monsoon pattern shifted, the overfit cracked. but the design itself was a city-wide algorithm for wet and dry. Cahokia, Mississippi Valley. Beneath St. Louis sprawl a planned metropolis rises from earth. Monk's Mound commanding plazas, wood henges marking solstices, causeways coordinating crowds. Stakes, urban choreography without stone. Action, borrow pits turn into retention basins. Palisade footprints hint at zoning. Trade goods map a continental grid. Impact, when you call this prehistoric, you erase civic engineering that scaled in dirt as elegantly as later cities did in brick. London's buried basilica. In the city's financial core, excavations found a Roman civic complex threaded with drains, hypocaust remnants, and street grids that still bully modern property lines. Stakes, infrastructure layers, each era negotiating with the last. Action, Roman foundations become anchors for medieval cellars and modern piles. Lost culverts reappear as persistent wet spots engineers must respect. Impact, planners aren't just designing, they're arguing with ghosts. Under Istanbul, cisterns and tunnels constitute a city-stack inheritance. The Basilica cistern is the postcard, but hundreds of smaller vaults, aqueduct feeders, and cut-stone conduits underwrite Byzantine and Ottoman supply. Stakes, redundancy as survival. Action, gradient-fed lines step over hills. Distribution nodes stage water to pressure neighborhoods. Maintenance galleries lace behind walls. Impact, when a siege comes, the city drinks on schedule because someone decades earlier cut a slope to the right degree. Mexico City hides gridded ancestors. Beneath colonial and modern blocks lie Aztec causeways, Chinampa canals, and earlier foundations tuned to a lake's breathing. Stakes, build on water, inherit the water's memory. Action, raised roads double as dikes, sluice gates partition flood control, apartment courtyards echo ancient patios. Impact, when stormwater swells today, it looks for old paths. Urban resilience means reading strata, not just codes. Angled under Madrid and Paris, catacombs, sewers, and quarries demonstrate how extraction turns into service. Stakes, subtraction becomes capacity. Action, stone mines leave galleries later repurposed for conduits and storage. Sewer lines adopt prior voids to save time and avoid surface disruption. Impact, the best route is sometimes the one somebody already cut, centuries before your permit existed. In the Andes, Quito and Cusco thread water down stairs and lanes, spill stone, curb notches, and corner drains standardize slope into safety. Stakes, microhydrology as urban design. Action, rain leaves roofs into sculpted spouts. Alleys tilt just enough to sweep storm sheets away from thresholds. Channels neck down at corners to accelerate flush and prevent trash jams. Impact, craft masquerading as picturesque is actually code. Beneath Naples, the Greco-Roman tufa world, caverns, wells, Greek cistern grids became a wartime refuge and a maintenance headache. Stakes, generational reuse without manuals. Action, wells get bricked, reopened, then certified. Ventilation shafts become stairwells. Moisture maps maintenance rounds. Impact, an ancient service corps keeps paying dividends and charging fees. Istanbul again, but with traffic. The Theodosian land walls gate alignment still set boulevard vectors, buried milestones underwrite parcel logic. Stakes, Roman alignment outlives empire. Action, when modern tunnels meet old foundations, curves kink to accommodate them. Stations land where space already negotiated. Impact, engineering is negotiation across time. Finally, the invisible maps under modern metros. Athens, Rome, Mexico City, London. Dig a station, uncover a forum, a bath, a temple, a market. Stakes, policy and ethics as engineering constraints. Action, rescue archaeology and civil works co-schedule. Platform boxes shrink or shift to preserve remains. Museums absorb what backhoes almost found. Impact, urban systems aren't just pipes and wires. They're archives that demand respect and time in the budget. Here's the pattern you can feel under your shoes. Cities accrete like shells. Each layer adds a function, cuts a channel, leaves a cavity. Later builders inherit slope, grade, and pressure even when they don't know the names of the hands that set them. Meanwhile, something quieter persists, maintenance culture. Angkor's spillways, Cahokia's basins, London's drains, Istanbul's cisterns, Mexico City's dikes, none work without caretakers. Break the guild and water claims the low point. Keep the guild and systems survive regime, language, and map. Psychological trigger, continuity beats spectacle. What saves a city is the checklist nobody sees. While we celebrate monuments, the real miracle is service, the boring math beneath ritual and power. And when service becomes story, you get continuity even after collapse. Which is where we go next. Bones, blood, and memory, the lineages that kept the checklists when the capitals fell. Bones, blood, and memory, What DNA actually shows. While cities kept water moving and heat breathing, people kept the plans inside their bodies. Bones carry maps, blood carries footnotes, and in the last decade, genetics turned rumor into roots. Start at altitude where lungs should fail. On the Tibetan plateau, a gene called EPAS1 helps people thrive in thin air. It didn't arise from scratch inside a single valley. It's Denisovan in origin, an inheritance from an archaic cousin that met us somewhere between Siberia and Southeast Asia. Stakes: survival traits can be borrowed. Action: fragments of ancient genomes recovered from a bone in Denisova cave matched stretches in living Tibetans. 2024-2025 genome studies in Nature and Nature Genetics sharpened the selection curve for EPAS1 at high altitude and documented multiple Denisovan introgression events. Impact: adaptation rides on admixture. We has always been plural. Inside Denisova cave itself, sediment and bone tell a crowded story. A child's scrap revealed a mother who was Neanderthal and a father who was Denisovan. Tools, beads, and ornaments sat near layers where different human lineages overlapped. Stakes: coexistence wasn't theory, it was family. Action: tiny pieces yielded whole genome signals. Labs pulled sequences out of dirt, not just bone. 2024-2025 work mapped distinct Denisovan pulses from Siberia to islands Southeast Asia, stacking presence across millennia. Impact: the human tree is a braided river. Branches split and rejoin, carrying useful cargo downstream. Move to the Nile. Ancient Egyptian DNA, retrieved from mummies spanning centuries, shows a population shaped by local ancestry with threads from the eastern Mediterranean and Near East weaving in and out across eras. Not sudden replacements, gradual flows. Stakes: identity over time looks like a tapestry, not a swap. Action: genome-wide data compared across periods and regions. Affinities to Levantan populations increase in some windows, retract in others, reflecting trade and empire. Impact: culture can change costumes while the neighborhood stays, genetically related to itself. Shift west to the American Southwest. For years we told a collapse story. The ancestral Pueblones disappeared. Genetics says they moved, merged, persisted. DNA markers found in ancient remains echo in modern Pueblo communities. Pottery styles change, kivas empty, but people don't vanish. Stakes: disappearance narratives flatten survival strategies. Action: careful sampling with tribal consent revealed continuity across sites and centuries. Social networks reassembled in river valleys. Impact: resilience often looks like integration. The guild moves, the craft stays. Ghosts appear where ruins don't. Environmental DNA, eDNA, pulled from lake sediments in far northern latitudes, shows human genetic traces in periods with no architecture. Stakes: presence without buildings is still presence. Action: cores taken from lake beds yielded fragments of human and animal DNA spanning thousands of years. Peaks align with pollen shifts and charcoal layers. Impact: settlement is a spectrum. Mobile lifeways leave clear signatures if you look in the right matrix. Follow the Andes from coast to highland. Genetic links knit maritime fishers, valley farmers, and mountain herders into one exchange web, matching what roads, quipu accounting, and ceramics hint. Stakes: trade routes double as gene routes. Action: genome studies identify shared segments among communities separated by altitude and ecosystem. Admixture dates correlate with periods of intensified exchange. Impact: infrastructure is biological. Corridors move people and their adaptations, not just goods. Meanwhile, Eurasia overlays another layer. Multiple pulses of Denisovan introgression show up from Siberia to islands Southeast Asia, distinct signals likely coming from different Denisovan populations. Stakes: Denisovan isn't one ghost, it's a family of them. Action: haplotype blocks in modern genomes cluster by geography and look like separate events, one feeding Himalayan adaptation, others shaping immune genes in Oceania. Impact: evolution is opportunistic. Old neighbors leave parts you keep. This is where storytelling gets risky, and where we hold the line. No, genetics doesn't prove mythic continents. It does prove that our ancestors met more kinds of humans than we imagined and took what worked. It proves that so-called collapses often led to continuity by other means. It proves that identity is layered, flexible, and local. What nobody knew at the time: climate stress selects for behaviors that don't fossilize. Marry out, move valleys, join the in-laws who know the canal, apprentice with an ex-bathkeeper, adopt a seed tolerant to salt. Genes record some of that, 2020's eDNA work even flags human presence where ruins are absent. The rest rides in rule of thumb and ritual. Bloodlines as blueprint now reads literally. A mason's knack can vanish in a generation if sons and daughters scatter. But a high-altitude allele can persist for millennia if it saves lives. In between sits culture, tender, portable, breakable. When the workshop shutters, DNA may carry the adaptation while stories keep the technique alive long enough to seed the next center. There's a caution. DNA tells kinship and selection, not motive. It says who mixed, not why. It shows timing bands, not oaths. So we braid lines, eDNA presence where canals expand, admixture dates where trade booms, selection peaks where climates swing. When multiple lines converge, meaning sharpens. Here's the turn. If people carried plans inside families, biological and social, then erasure seldom means extinction. It means relabeling. The descendants of Nubian kingdoms live in modern Sudanese communities. The heirs of ancestral Puebloan engineers live in today's pueblos. The keepers of highland hydrology still terrace hillsides. The plan survives by changing its name. So what erased monuments while the people remained? The next arc answers with triggers textbooks under play. Century-long droughts, soil tiredness, salinized fields, cold snaps that sealed fjords, monsoon shifts that humbled megastructures. Knowledge dies not from ignorance but from interruption, and interruptions have patterns. 10 triggers textbooks under play. First, the 2-kiloyear drought that broke the Akkadians. Stakes, an empire spanning rivers and roots faced a 40-plus-year rain failure. Action, cave stalagmites downwind record dust spikes, tablets shift tone from tribute to rationing, fields salinize under desperate irrigation. Impact, the first empire thins into city-states not because armies won, but because sky stopped paying. Second, Maya mega droughts paced like a drum you can't ignore. Stakes, kingdoms built on water scheduling hit decades of poor rainfall. Action, lake cores show isotopic drought signatures, reservoirs drop, inscriptions compress victories, then go quiet. Impact, abandonment comes in waves, hill by hill, not a single night, resettlement to wetter highlands, not disappearance. Third, Norse Greenland's cold shocks. Stakes, farmers at the margin gamble on a warm phase, then climate turns. Action, ice cores tie a huge eruption to cooling, grazing thins, trade routes ice up, walrus ivory markets move. Impact, lifeways optimized for hay and cattle fail, Inuit neighbors adapt with seals and mobility, the colony dissolves. Fourth, Angkor's monsoon regime shift, hydraulic overfit. Stakes, a megacity tuned to predictable pulses meets a new beat. Action, tree rings and sediment date alternating flood and drought. Canals silt under chaotic surges, emergency cuts send erosion through neighborhoods. Impact, water logic breaks, elites disperse south, temples endure but the operator's manual loses staff. Fifth, the slow burn of deforestation. Stakes, ship masts, lime kilns, terraces, wood budgets quietly implode landscapes. Action, pollen records map forest to scrub, hills lose rooted skin, rains carve gullies, springs dry. Impact, soils go mobile, labor shifts from building to salvaging, craft guilds move or die. Sixth, soil fatigue and salinization. Stakes, irrigation without drainage salts plains from Mesopotamia to the Indus. Action, yields fall, barley replaces wheat, boundary stones record shrinking productive plots, farmers push canals deeper, compounding the trap. Impact, cities feed fewer mouths, margins empty first, political centers wobble, then recalibrate elsewhere. Seventh, volcanoes that edit calendars. Stakes, a Tambora-grade blast drops temperatures and muddies monsoons. Action, ice cores spike sulfate, tree rings narrow, written records complain of years without summer. Impact, famines cascade, migrations accelerate, projects stall while states argue over omens, not engineering. Eighth, river betrayal, course shifts and avulsions. Stakes, Harapan grids lean on a river that wanders. Action, satellite geomorphology and dated sands show channels abandoning cities, wells deepen, shoreline towns swell as inland hubs shrink. Impact, not a fall but a pivot, craft routes bend to new water, script quiets as barter finds other mouths. Ninth, plague as amplifier, not sole cause. Stakes, pathogens arrive to populations already stressed by climate and trade compression. Action, burial peaks, coin hoards end abruptly, laws cap wages as labor vanishes. Impact, infrastructure maintenance collapses, bathhouses shudder, guilds fragment, knowledge bleeds out through hunger, not ignorance. 10th, the brittle point, guild breaks. Stakes, Expertise lives in a few hands. Action: one workshop closes, war draft, famine, persecution, and a narrow craft pipeline snaps. Impact: furnaces go cold, recipe tweaks vanish, methods retreat into legend and liturgy, 2 steps from function. Now the feedback loops that turn triggers into traps. Deforestation worsens drought by choking local rain. Salinized fields push farmers to clear more marginal land, which erodes faster. Famine weakens immunity, making epidemics lethal. War seizes granaries, forcing risky planting that depletes seed stock. Meanwhile, leaders double down on spectacle, bigger, steely, thicker walls, while maintenance budgets starve. Here's the quiet mechanic of loss. Craft dies when an apprenticeship misses a generation. One absent mason means a temple leaks. One absent canal crew means silt wins a season. One absent glassblower means lens quality drops below usefulness. That's how knowledge fades, by inches, at thresholds you only notice when a roof fails. And the Vanish strategy behind many collapses. Some communities didn't die out, they learned to disappear. They dropped monumental signatures, kept the water math, and folded into neighbors with lighter footprints. Oral laws replaced stone edicts, seasonal camps replaced palaces. If you're looking only for skyline, you'll miss the survivors in the tree line. The Vanish strategy, civilizations that survived by hiding. Some endings are disguises. If transmission breaks under drought and war, one answer is counterintuitive: shrink the signature, keep the system. Not collapse, camouflage. High in Peru's cloud forests, the Chachapoya built on cliff edges and knife ridges, stone settlements tucked into fog. Outsiders called them cloud people. Their architecture whispers 2 priorities: sightlines and disappearance. Narrow approach paths, switchbacks that force single file, storehouses stashed in overhangs. Stakes: survival means controlling exposure more than territory. Action: when pressure rose, from Inca expansion, then Spanish incursions, families moved through a vertical network. Ridge hamlets, granary caves, hilltop cemeteries. Burials perched on ledges watch valleys like sentries. Mummification and bundle placement encoded lineage claims without monumental plazas. Impact: identity persisted while footprint fragmented. Fold into an empire for tribute and safety. Keep marriage networks and mortuary rites on the margins. After conquest, many descendants remained in the high country. Names shift, textiles blend, but the ridge logic endures. Meanwhile, on China's southwestern plain, Sangsingdui surfaced masks and bronzes so unlike the Yellow River canon that for decades scholars argued whether it fit. Huge gold masks, wide eyes, tree-like bronze altars, ritual pits burned and buried. Stakes: a parallel ritual technology, sophisticated and distinct, operating outside the dynastic narrative. Action: artisans mastered high-tin bronze casting for thin, tall forms. Ceremonies likely featured towering trees and ancestor effigies. Then a selective burial, pits filled with smashed and burned ritual gear, reset visibility. Impact: a ritual complex withdraws from the stage, leaving a cache that looks like catastrophe but reads like controlled closure. The culture didn't vanish, it reappears downstream at Jinsha and in threads across Sichuan art. Integration without surrender, techniques migrate, iconography adapts. South along the Nile's bend, Nubian kingdoms traded, rivaled, and married with Egypt for millennia. Later, power centers moved upriver. Later still, political maps renamed borders. Stakes: erasure in records isn't erasure in people. Action: archaeology ties pottery, tumuli, and church plans into a continuous arc. Genetics in modern Sudanese communities carries markers consistent with ancient Nubian populations. Impact: the descendants of Kush live in today's Sudan. Languages altered, religions layered, but inheritance intact. Collapse: here is a cartographic trick. Across the southwest of North America, the ancestral Puebloan story we flagged comes into focus as strategy. When drought hit and great houses emptied, people consolidated along reliable rivers, joined kin elsewhere, and rebranded. Stakes: big architecture disappears, communities don't. Action: Kiva plans morph, ceramic styles hybridize, migration stories in oral tradition align with genetic continuity. Impact: identity survives by changing its name tag. In rainforest and mountain margins, oral tradition became the vault. Polynesian wayfinding chants remember stars and swells, Andean isles recite water turns, Australian songlines map routes and resources with melody. Stakes: knowledge stored in people, versioned in performance. Action: a drought council meets, elders sing a path that leads to a spring, a taboo list says which hillside is hungry, really, which slope fails under rain. Impact: when writing burns or scripts stop, Ritual and story keep files open. Call this Vanish as policy. Under threat, reduce targets, smaller granaries in more places, seasonal compounds instead of citadels, portable prestige instead of palaces. Stakes, empire favors spectacle, survival favors redundancy. Action, Sangsingdui closes pits, Chachapoya ridge dwellers disperse, Nubian centers move upriver, Pueblo groups decamp to river valleys. Impact, archaeology reads silence where bureaucracy once stamped. The people who made the systems keep them in quieter forms. Consider the mechanics. If guilds break craft, rebuild as household knowledge, a terrace recipe taught in marriage, a canal schedule embedded in a festival, a planting calendar baked into a saint's day. Stakes, religion as ops manual, action, syncretism, old water gods wearing new names, saint processions walking maintenance routes, shrines placed where flow needs clearing. Impact, the plan lives under liturgy. Centuries later, a hydrologist can still follow the procession and find every critical drain. What nobody knew at the time was that our tools would start seeing through camouflage. LIDAR picks up low-profile ridge walls. Sediment cores show managed fire where wild forest stands. Stable isotopes in skeletons reveal steady diets through political turmoil. Genetics shows threads across rebrandings. The invisible isn't empty, it's optimized. There's a moral here about our search bias. We look for pyramids, so we miss mounds. We look for palaces, so we miss terraces. We weigh stone, so we underestimate wood. We read inscriptions, so we discount songs. The Vanish strategy exploits that bias, hide in materials and forms that rot, move, and blend, be hard to tax, hard to conscript, hard to burn. Now the stakes for us. If resilience often looks like smaller footprints, our future lessons live in communities historically mislabeled as marginal. Cloud forest farmers running stacked crops, riverine fishers with flood calendars in their heads, desert pastoralists rotating pastures on rules older than any ministry. Action, listen to continuity, not just grandeur. Impact, what seems like traditional, can be a high technology of survival. Lightweight, modular, redundantly stored in people instead of stone. Silence saved them, but silence also sealed messages for us. The next clues appear where vanishing ends and caching begins. Hoards, ship burials, sealed chambers, scroll jars. Not trophies, operating manuals for reboots, stashed when noise got too loud. And when we opened them, they read like checklists. 10 messages in burials, hoards, and chambers. When silence has to hold a lesson, people bury a book you can't burn. The Staffordshire Hoard. A farmer's detector finds gold and garnet fittings by the handful, sword pommels, hilt plates, crosses bent double. Stakes, not a treasure chest, a ledger. Action, the pieces are almost all martial and many deliberately broken, as if unregistering power, stripping enemies' blades, canceling them, then offering their parts to the ground. Impact, a conflict log disguised as glitter. Ritual deposition doubles as a security protocol. What you bury can't be redeployed. Sutton Hoo, a ship hauled over land becomes a chamber, its hull an inverted sky. Stakes, portable cosmos. Action, a 27-meter vessel is packed with regalia, helmet plates alive with stories, Byzantine silver singing of long routes, lyres and spears arranged like constellations. Impact, for a ruler, death is logistics. The burial inventory's office and altar, mapping an elite toolkit for governance, diplomacy, and war. Amphipolis, marble walls, sphinxes on guard, and a mosaic of Persephone taken to the underworld. Stakes, a tomb becomes a broadcast about continuity after Alexander. Action, chambers step in sequence, guardian figures, a story of descent and return, bones of several individuals. Impact, stone encodes a contested transition, who rests here mattered less than what the monument teaches. Power survives by staging lineage. Tutankhamun, nested shrines, a sarcophagus inside coffins inside mask, like a curriculum. Stakes, protection, and pedagogy. Action, chariots, bows, surgical knives, oils, model boats, and board games. Texts and amulets specify how to navigate dangers, how to breathe again. Impact, the kit is a manual for renewal, religion as survival tech, crafts bundled for use beyond the palace. The Dead Sea Scrolls. Jars tucked into desert cavities carry rulebooks and commentaries through 2,000 winters. Stakes, blueprint under threat. Action, a community packs law codes, hymns, calendars, and apocalyptic expectations, then caches them as soldiers approach. Impact, when institutions burn, texts flee to stone. The scrolls preserve a minority operating system that would otherwise be footnote. A hoard in peacetime can be rehearsal for emergency. Think of Roman coin clumps found under cottage floors. Stakes, personal ledgers hardened into metal. Action, someone buries pay in installments. Layers show inflation, emperor changes, sudden stops. Impact, micro-history of risk. When trust thins, the ground becomes a bank. The next hands reading it are archaeologists and their spreadsheets. Bog offerings in northern Europe. Weapon bundles, wagons, sometimes whole boats lowered into dark water. Stakes, packed maintenance. Action, communities consign costly gear and food to places that don't give back, sealing agreements with landscape and gods. Impact, these deposits are essentially escrow, wealth removed from circulation to guarantee behavior. A society self-limits by ritual sacrifice. The Varna graves, Bulgaria, older than pyramids, where gold floods a few burials while others lie spare. Stakes, inequality first edition. Action, beads, scepters, and heavy pectorals concentrate in select individuals. Tools and shells accompany others. Impact, social stratification and craft specialization condensed into a cemetery, a ledger of who held the rules. Ritual pits at Sangsingdui again, but read as message. Stakes, closing ceremony. Action, bronzes smashed, burnt, and buried with order, masks, trees, blades, like decommissioning a temple's code. Impact, controlled amnesia prevents misuse, while the buried set waits for the next reader, a shutdown sequence frozen in ash and clay. Hidden chambers under floors and behind walls, priests' passages in Egyptian temples, stash holes in synagogues and churches, reliquaries with nested surprises. Stakes, secondary memory. Action, communities put commentary, relics, and sometimes contraband knowledge in architectural subroutines, compartments accessible to initiates, resistant to fire and decree. Impact, redundancy. Even if the public script changes, the private cache restores boot functions after crisis. Together, these caches, ships, jars, and pits say the same thing. When noise rises, convert knowledge into objects and bury them in steady media, wet clay, dry sand, cold rock. They also say something harder, teach through kits. A hoard is a syllabus, a tomb is a workstation, a scroll jar is a classroom bell kept silent until it's safe to ring. What nobody knew then, what we're only now recovering, is how many formats the manual took. Tool fittings that diagram warfare economies, ship burials that package powers dependencies, tomb inventories that standardize elite skill sets, scroll libraries that snapshot law in transit, ritual pits that shutter systems safely. Each is a message about operating procedures under duress. Now we can read them with more than eyes. CT peels paintless wood. Residue analysis pulls recipes from pots. Multispectral light resurrects faded ink. Muons and radar sketch voids without chisels. The caches keep speaking. And they aim us toward the arteries that let them travel. Sea roads and war roads, the networks where manuals rode decks and caravans, because a manual only matters if it moves. Sea roads and war roads, networks older than empires. If manuals were buried to be found later, the reason they mattered in the first place was motion. Knowledge grows legs when it rides a hull, a camel, or a soldier's pack. Networks, wet and dry, are the organs of civilization. Off Turkey's southern coast, the Uluburun ship slipped under the waves in the 14th century BCE and froze a trade sentence mid-phrase. Psychological trigger. It's a bill of lading you can walk through. Every crate is a sentence fragment from a global paragraph. Divers read it object by object. 10 tons of copper oxide ingots stacked like scales, tin enough to alloy them into bronze, Canaanite jars of resin, raw glass in cobalt blues and deep purples, ivory and ostrich eggshell, Baltic amber, Egyptian faience, and gold scarabs stamped with royal names. Stakes. This isn't a boutique order. It's an index of demand spanning continents. Action, a crew loads standardized ingots at one port, resin at another, glass elsewhere, and art objects everywhere prestige flows, then sails into a storm. Impact. The sea becomes archive. The cargo proves an economy already global by Bronze Age standards. Materials, tastes, and techniques braided into one itinerary. A century later in another wreck near Antikythera, we saw luxury and logic share a deck. Marble and bronze statuary, fine glassware, furniture fittings, and the geared machine we met earlier. Stakes. Elites don't ship art in isolation, they ship operating systems of taste, time, and display. Action. Merchants assemble an ensemble a Roman patron can't resist. Myths in metal, astronomy in bronze, dining in style. Impact. Technology isn't a lonely genius. It's a line item in a shipment where every piece talks to the others about status and scheduling. On land, war roads keep rhythm. At Britain's cold edge, thin wooden postcards, the Vindolanda tablets, record the heartbeat of logistics along Rome's frontier. I need more socks. Send cloaks. We're short of beer. A birthday invitation slips in between requisitions. Stakes, supply chains are human chains, comfort keeps discipline. Action, pack trains cross moors, quartermasters track wool and grain, dispatch riders carry both orders and gossip. Impact, empires don't hold lines with swords alone. They hold them with footwear, calendars, and written favors. Zoom east to Central Asia. Imagine Sogdian merchants as ligaments connecting bones you thought were separate: China, Persia, India, the steppe. They speak multiple languages, swap customs without surrendering identity, run caravanserai like routers. You plug in goods and news. They output routes and credit. Stakes. Between states lies the state that matters, trust. Action, letters preserved in desert forts complain of bandits, praise reliable governors and list debts. Silk and paper sail out. Silver and horses ride in. Impact. What we call the Silk Road was a federation of promises enforced by reputation more than law. Open a tomb in China's north and step into a factory. The terracotta army doesn't just guard Qinshi Huang. It reveals industrial organization disguised as eternity. Thousands of figures with modular parts, weapon racks in standardized slots, assembly sequences implied by tool marks. Stakes, mass production before the term existed. Action, kiln sites fire tiles and figures. Bronze workshops cast arrowheads in molds reused to monotony. Teams specialize in heads, hands, tunics. Impact, military power scaled by logistics and quality control. The tomb is a showroom for a supply chain. War roads drink from sea roads and vice versa. Phoenician harbors provision Assyrian campaigns. Persian royal roads deliver Greek mercenaries to ships. Roman fleets feed legions that extend roads for more fleets to use. Stakes, movement stacks. Ports call roads, roads call depots, depots call administrators. Action, taxes convert into grain. Grain into rations, rations into marching speed measured by milestones and oar strokes. Impact, stability isn't the absence of motion. It's sustained motion underwritten by schedule. Meanwhile, accounts hide in places you decall sacred. In temple archives from Mesopotamia to Mesoamerica, scribes log offerings, loans, rations, and routes. Stakes, religion and registry share desks. Action, a merchant borrows silver against a future shipment. A priest records weights and witnesses. A caravan leaves on a calendar date chosen for both omen and safety. Impact, belief lubricates compliance. Paper, clay, bark, papyrus makes risk legible. Networks also transmit failure. When the late Bronze Age broke around 1200 BCE, it wasn't just sea peoples. Tin roots kinked. Palace stores were raided by their own hungry garrisons. Letters begged for grain that didn't arrive. Stakes, redundancy matters because single points of failure kill. Action, shipwrecks multiply. Emissaries write that pirates infest coasts. Inland routes strain as harbors burn. Impact, the same veins that fed luxury-starved states. Without tin, bronze economies seized. Iron rose not as a marvel, but as a fallback that eventually won. But watch what persists. Even as courts fell, certain workshops kept working. Itinerant smiths carried recipes. Coastal pilots remembered shoals. Sogdian descendants rerouted around closed passes. The Roman roadbed still set medieval pilgrimage stages. Persian courier logic reappeared in Mongol yam posts. Indian Ocean monsoon timetables outlived empires on its shores. Stakes, longevity belongs to schedules, not crowns. Action, a dhow captain teaches his son wind by smell and swell. A monk walks mileposts set by a legionnaire. A caravan leader maintains a ledger of favors 2 dynasties old. Impact, continuity hides in calendars and fees. Here's the read that brings us home. Sea roads and war roads weren't just about goods and glory. They were about timing, redundancy, and reputation. Civilization as a choreography of arrivals. When that dance stumbles, hordes get buried, manuals go under floors, and people vanish into new names carrying old checklists. The networks loop to us because we still live by corridors that can fail together. And the artifacts riding them, ingots, mechanisms, tablets, statues, aren't curiosities. They're receipts, curiosity hook. Which receipt breaks your timeline the most? 10 ancient tech lines to the present. Roman concrete first. Harbors like Caesarea and Pozzuoli still resist waves because their mix wasn't guesswork. Lime met volcanic ash. Seawater triggered a slow-growing mineral, a luminous tobermorite that knitted cracks shut. Today's materials labs copy that chemistry for self-healing concrete in docks and sea walls. Lineage isn't nostalgia, its durability recovered from ruin. Optical quality glass and early lenses next. Long before telescopes, artisans in the Mediterranean and Near East learned to melt, color, and clear glass while rock crystal lenses turned up from Nimrud to the Aegean. Were they lab gear? Not yet. But the craft of clarity, melting curves, polishing discipline, feeds every screen and scope we carry. Your phone is a descendant of beads and bowls. Bronze casting tolerances that rival watchmaking. In China's warring states and the Mediterranean's classical workshops, thin-walled vessels and weapon fittings betray control of shrinkage, mold, temperature, and multi-part assembly. The trick wasn't magic, it was metrology by hand. Today's investment casting of turbine blades and medical implants walks the same road. Repeatable molds, predictable cooling, surface finish as a promise. Pyramid void logic and modern structures. Whether the Great Pyramid, Big Void, and North Face Corridor served weight relief or ritual, engineers see a familiar pattern: internal cavities lighten load paths and control stress. We do it with trusses and tuned mass dampers. They did it with geometry inside stone. The throughline is intent, shape the air to manage the weight. Hypocaust to HVAC. Roman floors floated on stacks of tiles, hot air washed under rooms and climbed flues to draw draft. Maintenance swept soot on schedule. The modern office coil, duct, and diffuser are direct airs. The lesson we forgot then remembered. Climate is a service, not a device. Performance comes from balance, cleaning, and control. Water automation without wires. Maya and Angkor engineers choreographed head pressure with weirs, not algorithms. Today, gravity-fed irrigation, stormwater detention, and self-regulating siphons revive those principles for low-energy cities. Passive works when you respect slope, section, and silt. Acoustic engineering in stone. From Greek theaters to Andean ritual spaces, builders tuned steps, walls, and niches so words carried and chants merged. They didn't measure in decibels, they listened and adjusted. We call it soundscaping, reflectors, diffusers, absorbers, still the same triad, now drawn in CAD, learned in amphitheaters. Roadbeds built for centuries. Roman highways layered graded aggregates, cambered crowns, and side ditches. They weren't indestructible, just honest about water. Today's long-life pavements repeat the stack. Subgrade prep, drainage first, then surface. Maintenance beats miracle. The proof is that our trucks still hunt Roman alignments for the least resistance. Shipwrights hydrodynamics by feel. Before tank tests, black hulls learned monsoon and swell by iteration. Dow junk, trireme, caravel. Keel, rocker, chine, and sail plan are experiments run across generations. Naval architecture now simulates what pilots sensed. Lift on a sail, drag on a hull, the penalty of a bad angle in a bad sea. Finally, craft fragility, tech peaks that vanish then return. Roman concrete lost to medieval lime. Islamic and Venetian glass picked up clarity again. Damascus steel's pattern vanished with closed workshops. Japanese blades preserved a cousin logic. Bronze mirror polishing survived in shrines when factories forgot shine. Today, artisanal lines and labs rejoin, reverse engineering recipes from residues and rust. The throughline is the pipeline, not the product. Break the guild and the formula sleeps. Mend the guild and the line wakes. Cross these 10, you can feel the handoff. Materials remember environments, methods embed in maintenance, performance lives in teams. Ancient lessons aren't props for romance, they're specifications recovered in time to matter. Concrete that laughs at salt, glass that sees better because it's cleaner. Air that moves because a duct is sized the way a flue once was. Water that slows because a terrace remembers a storm. Sound that carries because a wall learned to scatter. The caution sits beneath the pride. Knowledge lasts when it's routine. The hypocaust fails when sweepers stop. The canal silts when the crew breaks. The casting goes soft when gauges leave the bench. Our link to them is continuity of boring excellence, checklists, apprentices, time. Which sets the stage for the countdown you asked for. We've trailed the lines, vetted the claims, and watched how transmission bends. Now the 50 impossible artifacts, one table, one heartbeat, so you can see the pattern land. The resets theory, what the evidence actually supports. Here is where the pattern lands without romance. Not cataclysms that wipe slates clean, not secret super civilizations that vanish overnight, but cycles. Peaks of know-how, shocks that bottleneck transmission, fragments that persist, and techniques that re-emerge when conditions and caretakers align. Start with the shape of a reset. A community knots observation into method. Newgrange's beam, Nebra's metal sky, Maya water math, Roman air. Then a stack of disruptions arrives: drought, soil fatigue, river shifts, war, epidemic. Crucially, the break rarely deletes people. It pinches pathways, guilds thin, apprentices scatter, manuals migrate into ritual, liturgy, and habit. Objects go to ground on purpose. The plan survives in pieces, waiting for roots and readers. Across cases, one predictor keeps showing up: social flexibility. Systems that tolerate redundancy and local decision-making weather shocks, brittle ones fracture. Angkor's hydraulic machine was brilliant and overfit. When monsoons changed tempo, centralized channels fought new beats. By contrast, Andean terrace systems dispersed across valleys, sustained by village-level calendars and kin co-ops. In the American Southwest, big houses went quiet, but river communities with mixed subsistence picked up the season and carried it forward. Transmission is fragile by design. Expertise runs through narrow pipelines, master to apprentice, foreman to crew. You can see it in metal. Damascus patterns die when ore and recipe drift. Roman concrete sleeps when fueling chains and ash sources change. Hypocausts chill when sweepers don't show. The same fragility protects survival. A technique stored in a festival or saint's day can cross regimes because it doesn't look like power, it looks like piety. So why does acceptance lag when the evidence accumulates? Misdating, inertia, and habits of mind. For a century, timelines were ladders. Foragers become farmers, become cities, become states, become machines. Göbekli Tepe pens the order and gets called an anomaly. Chauvet and Altamira stretch minds and meet accusations before confirmations. The problem isn't the facts. It's that we're trained to treat complexity as late and singular. The record says it's early, plural, and recurrent. Our dating tools are closing the excuses. Radiocarbon calibration, luminescence, cosmogenic exposure, dendrochronology, and now Muon imaging, LIDAR, and eDNA tighten windows. The 2020 squeeze means fewer wiggle rooms to tuck anomalies under rugs. A void behind a chevron stops being rumor when endoscopes send images. A drought becomes a schedule when stalagmite magnesium spikes match tablet pleas for grain. A lineage stops being myth when an allele selection curve rises on a plateau. Take a single thread, water. We watch Nabta Playa mark seasons for herders. Maya reservoirs meter monsoon, Angkor overfits. Inca stairs bleed energy down slopes. Istanbul buries cisterns to buffer siege. Mexico City keeps inheriting the lake's breath. When shocks come, centralized water regimes crack, distributed ones bend. The reset isn't a fall, it's a narrowing to what can be carried by fewer hands. Apply the same read to materials. Bronze, concrete, glass, optics. Peaks cluster where supply lines meet guild stability. When exchanges kink tin shortages, ash quarries abandon, fuel scarcities, the craft recoils to maintainable forms. Later, under different names, techniques resurface. Fly ash in modern cements, investment casting reborn as aerospace, passive cooling as new, sustainable design that Greek and Roman builders would recognize instantly. The cultural engine is stubbornly human. Groups borrow under pressure. Denisovan genes assist high-altitude living. Nubian ceramic habits linger through political relabeling. Puebloan social structures recombine without monumentality. The reset, in biological terms, is selection for behaviors and networks that preserve function with less spectacle. You can lose a capital and keep a calendar. You can bury a manual and keep a guild alive in weddings and wakes. Here's the boundary we will cross. Resets aren't proof of lost global empires. They're proof that similar problems produce convergent solutions and that methods spread along measurable routes. Uluburun's cargo is not a whisper of Atlantis. It's a manifest of a Bronze Age economy bigger and older than we were taught. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't an orphan from an erased machine age. It's the far end of Greek mechanical astronomy, sitting among luxury for patrons who could afford both myth and math. If there's a warning, it's this: our resilience still runs on guilds and maintenance. We dress it in software and supply chain lingo, but the dependency tree looks familiar. Few hands, narrow choke points, synchronized corridors that can fail together. The strongest defense remains boring. Decentralize, train broadly, codify checklists in multiple media, and stage caches you hope you'll never need. So when we say reset, we mean a loop with memory. Peaks do not promise permanence, valleys do not promise oblivion. What matters is whether the next hands can find the beam, the flue, the weir, the recipe, and whether the paths between them are still open when weather and politics turn. Our countdown of 50 artifacts is the map, receipts of highs, notes from bottlenecks, and breadcrumbs that led methods back. Master countdown, the 50 impossible artifacts. Here's the table you asked for, 50 receipts, rapid fire. Not marvels for their own sake, but pressure points where timelines bend, methods surface, and transmission flickers. Göbekli Tepe's T-pillars, hunter-gatherers carving megaliths 11,500 BCE. Ritual before farming, organization without cities. Newgrange's winter beam, a stone computer that hits a 5-minute window every year for 5 millennia. Chauvet's lions, art with shading and motion 30,000 years early, mined depth long before metal. Saddle Huruk's rooftops, a traffic plan without streets, houses as streets, ancestors under floors as memory. Nebra sky disk, bronze holds a solstice lesson in handheld form, recalibrated over generations. Antikythera Mechanism, gears predicting eclipses and festival cycles, the drowned workshop that rewrites ancient tech. Uluburan cargo, 10 tons of copper, tin, glass, ivory, Bronze Age globalization on a wooden hull. Vindolanda tablets, socks, beer, birthdays, empire sustained by stationery and supply. Terracotta army tool marks, modular mass production as funerary theater, logistics frozen in clay. Machu Picchu hydrology, intakes, traps, cascades, a mountain estate that breathes like a machine. Tiwanaku's fits, precision stone as standards, keyed recesses broadcasting a craft curriculum. Maya hydraulic cells, reservoirs and causeways as seasonal code, automation before valves. Roman hypocausts, drafts and flues composing indoor weather, soot sweeping as civic duty. Istanbul cistern mesh, redundancy under siege, gradient and vault as policy. Cahokia's earthworks, urban choreography in soil, basins as both ritual and flood control. Angkor's barrays, a monsoon engine, brilliance that overfit, then suffered a tempo change. Stone circles, lunar standstills, community astronomy in granite, calendars as civic glue. Nimrud lenses, rock crystal focus hinting at handheld optics, clarity chasing craft. Damascus steel's ghost, pattern performance lost when ore and recipe split, fragility of guild pipelines. Roman concrete harbors, seawater-grown crystals mending cracks, chemistry that slept then woke in labs. Greek theaters, whisper to the back row, curve and scatter learned by ear. Road camber and ditch, Roman water honesty, longevity as slope discipline. Napta playa ring, pastoral astronomy on the desert's edge, cattle and calendar braided. Skara Bray fixtures, built-in beds and shelves, domestic standardization before states. Varna gold graves, inequalities early ledger, specialization condensed in a cemetery. Sangsing Dewey ritual pits, high tin bronzes decommissioned by fire, selective burial as shutdown protocol. Sutton Hoo ship set, a cosmology in cargo, power taught through inventory. Staffordshire hoard, blades stripped, gold bent, conflict recorded as ritual deposition. Amphipolis chambers, a story of succession in marble, descent and return mosaicked into politics. Tutankhamun's toolkit, nested protections and a syllabus for rebirth, religion as operating manual. Dead Sea Scroll jars, rulebooks cached against fire, law in flight to stone. Peary Rise type composites, pilot wisdom stitched into charts, cartography as oral math. Roman London drains, wet ghosts steering modern piles, infrastructure that won't let go. Naples Tufa world, quarries turned sewers turned shelters, subtraction becoming capacity. Mexico City's buried dikes, lake memory under asphalt, storms chasing old paths. Inca stair water, spill stone and curb notches, microhydrology as code. Hypocaust brushes, maintenance as technology, the crew as the machine's true heart. Assyrian Canal stele, kilometers of gradient enforced by inscription, water rights as statecraft. Harappan wells, gridded drains and baked bricks, quiet sanitation at urban scale. Chavin acoustic galleries, roaring water, resonant ducts, architecture as mined theater. Chin crossbow locks, standardized triggers, interchangeable parts, repeatability underwriting force. Hellenistic automata notes, stage machines, temple doors, engineered surprise, play as proof of method. Pompeii's street ruts and stones, traffic design in basalt, crossings as flow regulators. Athenian coin dies, crisp control of pressure and strike, micrometrology minting trust. Phoenician purple vats, Industrial chem in seaside pits, dyes as value network. Chinese lacquerware, polymer science in sap, coatings that outperform centuries. Polynesian wayfinding sticks, swell maps in wood and string, ocean calculus as touch. Kipu cords, not encoded ledgers, accounting without ink, portable and auditable. Ethiopian steely fields, monoliths as status and survey, lift and set by communal calculus. Great Pyramid voids and corridor, internal spaces that manage stress or ritual, either way geometry as intent. Now the 5 that hit the timeline hardest. Göbekli Tepe says ritual can organize labor before fields, turning our ladder sideways. Chauvet says the mind's palette was full early. Our ancestors didn't wait for cities to dream in 3D. The Nebra disk proves portable sky logic in a farmer's kit, astronomy as agriculture's twin. The Antikythera Mechanism, now with 2024-2025 inscriptions, collapses the gap between myth and math. Algorithmic thinking lived in bronze and ran the festival clock. Roman concrete reminds us that lost can be sleep, materials storing solutions we only relearn under duress. Thread them. A geared calendar sails with statues, a bronze sky disk teaches sewing, a hypocaust hums under basilicas that modern beams still respect. Kipu cords audit terraces that slow stormwater, wayfinding sticks cross oceans timed by stars marked on disks first hammered in Europe's hills. Manuals move because networks move, caches exist because networks fail. A few are still sealed, corridors in Giza mapped by muons, urban blocks under modern grids imaged by LIDAR, lakebeds holding eDNA from people without walls. They're queued for scans, cores, and careful entry, not to feed fantasy, but to tighten the dates and strengthen the pattern. You wanted one answer, you got a map. 50 artifacts as milestones on routes of method, memory, and maintenance. They don't prove secret empires. They prove continuity under pressure, systems built by hands that measured, tuned, and taught. When the corridors pinched, some pieces slept. When routes reopened, they woke. Counterclaims, hoaxes, and how we vet the list. Before we sprint any further, we tighten the bolts. Some of these artifacts attract noise, wishful thinking, misread layers, outright hoaxes. If we're going to claim transmission and resets, we have to police our own story. Start with the easy cuts. Crystal skulls, tourist-era carvings with modern tool marks and no secure excavation context. Out. OOP spark plugs in stone with no stratigraphy, only souvenir shop lore. Out. Maps promoted as proof of global ice age cartographers. We strip them to what's dated, sourced, and internally consistent. If a chart's coastline is accurate because a Renaissance scribe copied multiple pilot books, that's skill, not lost satellites. Then the ambiguous edge. The Antikythera Mechanism is solid. CT, inscriptions, gear counts, eclipse dials tied to Babylonian cycles. But we don't inflate it to a vanished tech epic. One machine proves a workshop and a tradition, not a planet-wide factory floor. The Great Pyramid's voids and North Face corridor. The scans are robust. The purpose is. We label hypotheses. Weight relief and internal staging have engineering plausibility. Ritual significance is culturally reasonable. Treasure rooms, not so much. Until entry and mapping resolve the geometry, we keep it in the function undetermined drawer. Pseudoscience thrives on skipping context. A rule, materials, provenance, and method. Materials, does the alloy, ceramic recipe, or mortar chemistry match its purported time and region? Provenance, was it excavated, recorded, and dated in situ, or did it appear in a market with a story? Method, can independent techniques converge on the same answer? Radiocarbon and thermoluminescence, dendrochronology and historical records, muography and ground-penetrating radar. If 2 or more lines agree, the floor rises. If they don't, we slow down. We also mark debate, not erase it. Tiwanaku's tolerances, are they the product of patient abrasion and modular standards or post-fracture illusions of precision? We point to joint geometry and repeated keyed recesses rather than Instagram sheen. Sangsingdui's ritual pits, collapse or controlled decommissioning. The burn and break patterns suggest deliberate closure. Regional continuity at Jinsha supports cultural survival. The case remains open to new finds. DNA is another minefield. Admixture is clear for Denisovan signals. EPAS-1's high-altitude advantage in Tibetans is a firm example of adaptive introgression. But we resist grand claims that turn every shared segment into a migration epic. Genetics tells threads and timing windows, not myths. We pair it with settlement archaeology, pollen and charcoal curves, and trade proxies to keep feet on the ground. Redatings cut two ways. When luminescence or cosmogenic exposure pushes a date older, we publish error bars and calibration notes. Stone circle ages moving earlier? Good. If sampling density, exposure geometry, and independent checks support it. If not, we treat it as a testable claim, not a headline. Likewise, radiocarbon wiggle matches get flagged when reservoir effects could bias samples. We separate the show from the system. A bronze mirror with astonishing polish doesn't imply lasers. It implies patient abrasives, controlled casting, and finishing guilds. A lens in a palace doesn't imply telescopes. It implies curiosity about focus and a glass or crystal craft capable of making it. The magic is method, not myth. Finally, motivation. Hoaxers sell spectacle, caretakers preserve function. Our list privileges evidence that ties to maintenance, standardization, and repeated use. Drains, flues, water logic workshops, dials, over one-off dazzlers. It's harder to fake a city's slope than a shiny trinket. That's our compass. So yes, we've cut pet theories, we've flagged weak links, we've labeled speculation, we've put receipts behind romance, because the case is stronger when the noise is gone. New tools, new finds, the live feed of discovery. Now the reason this story feels so immediate, the feed is live. Every month a buried chamber, a ghost street, or a genetic breadcrumb moves from rumor to record because our instruments turned stone, soil, and air into paper. Curiosity hook. The next void, street, or allele could drop between uploads. Your timeline is now an excavation log. In Egypt, cosmic ray muons keep walking through rock and writing their signatures into detectors. The 2024-2025 passes refined a narrow corridor just behind the Great Pyramid's north face chevrons and reinforced a larger void above the Grand Gallery. Endoscopes peered into the chevron space. Ground-penetrating radar and ultrasound cross-checked density. Nobody is guessing the presence anymore. We're only arguing purpose. Meanwhile, similar techniques at Menkora mapped air-filled anomalies that beg for muon confirmation. Imaging is now a pre-dig step, not an optional flourish. In the jungle, LIDAR turned forest transparent. Survey planes over Cambodia, Mexico, Guatemala, and Bolivia stitched billions of points into relief maps where roads and canals resolve like veins under skin. Moats become linked reservoirs. Hills become platform mounds. Paths become causeways aligned to stars and slopes. The next move isn't a bulldozer. It's a drone with a ground team walking in on foot to ground truth terrace edges and spillway sills. Psychological trigger. Once you've seen the veins, you can't go back to the leaf. Beneath streets, urban rail projects and basements act like core samples. London's financial district slices reveal Roman drains and walls that still bully modern pile placement. Istanbul's new tunnels thread past Byzantine cisterns mapped with GPR. Mexico City's works keep meeting the lake's memory and Aztec foundations. The policy grind, rescue archaeology, construction phasing, in situ museums, became a discovery engine. Every station box is a stratigraphy lesson. Sediment holds voices we never expected to hear. Environmental DNA pulled from lake cores and cave soils now detects human presence without a single shard. A sterile-looking layer in the far north quietly carries fragments of our species alongside fauna, pollen, and charcoal, walking settlement boundaries back into periods we labeled empty. The lab bench becomes a time machine. The control sample becomes the plot twist. CT and multispectral imaging keep reading without unwrapping. Mummy bundles surrender amulets and texts, sealed scrolls scorched by Vesuvius whisper letters at wavelengths our eyes never evolved to see. Painted plasters tell their second stories under infrared. Even wood without paint gives up tool rhythms. Add strikes you can count to find a workshop's tempo. Robotics and micro-endoscopy shrank our intrusion. In a corridor we once would have cracked open, a pencil-thin scope now tiptoes, turns, and loops back with footage and residue swabs. We can sniff incense compounds or detect soot particles to test ritual without moving a single block. And the big picture tools are converging with the small. A muon map says void here. GPR refines depth, shape, and edges. Thermal cameras at dawn catch temperature differentials along a wall that mark flues or blocked passages. Material analysis on a dust pinch tells us whether a cavity breathed smoke or stayed clean. One site becomes a stack of congruent transparencies. The live feed also shows us our ethics maturing. Indigenous communities are co-authors on sampling plans. Data sovereignty policies guard genomes and place names. Field schools teach maintenance histories alongside excavation technique. The guardians of terraces, canals, and songs are finally getting wired into the loop as peers, not exhibits. On the horizon, more audacity. Underwater LIDAR and photogrammetry rebuild shipwrecks knot by knot. Autonomous subs sweep harbors where tin and glass once moved. Satellite radar watches buried river courses creep across deserts that still hide cities. Even AI earns a narrow, honest place, patterning ceramic shards at scale, predicting mound alignments from terrain, flagging anomalies for human judgment rather than inventing phantom empires. The rhythm is the point. Scans cue digs, digs tune scans, labs loop back into maps. A corridor found means a plan inferred. A canal mapped means a maintenance guild glimpsed. A genome sequenced means a migration retold with a local accent. Every new tool makes the old questions sharper. Where did the plan live, who carried it, and who's still carrying it now? And the feed doesn't end with us. It hands future caretakers better manuals, open, redundant, portable. If we learned anything from resets, it's this: archive the method in more than stone. Put it in code, in labs, in festivals, in training. The scanners taught us how much waits in the dark. The responsibility now is to keep the lights on. The final meaning, why this matters to you. Resets reward the boring hero, maintenance. Decentralize water and power. Train apprentices before you need them. Cache manuals in multiple media. Map your city's hidden drains. Fund guilds, not monuments. Teach checklists like hymns. Psychological trigger, control the unglamorous and you control the future. Your kids inherit what you routine, not what you admire. Cycles of brilliance and forgetting define us. Continuity belongs to people who rehearse. Want the buried operating manuals behind modern systems? Watch the companion investigation next. Subscribe for more verified receipts and drop the artifact that hit you hardest. Your comment might anchor the sequel.